Ian Cruickshanks is in the studio with us for further analysis in terms of this development. One of the economists, Ian, was saying in the insert that we're coming off from a low base.
Yes.
It's those 2 quarters that we didn't do well, and in this third quarter there was a change. What brought that about?
Well, first of all, let's just say it's too soon to celebrate. You know, the economy went down to the lower basement instead of operating at ground level, and we're still only just looking over the ground level area. So for the year, we still don't know if we're going to come out positively.
But still, growth is better than not growing.
Slow growth is better than no growth. There's no doubt about that at all. What brought about the change? One word: confidence. What we've seen is
Absolutely.
At the beginning of the year, confidence was bashed against the wall. It was business confidence, consumer confidence, agriculture, everywhere it was, there was no confidence.
Let's backtrack a bit, Ian, to February when Cyril Ramaphosa took over the running of SA Inc., as they call it.
Right.
What are the things that he's been doing that has led to this confidence that you talk about?
First of all, he displays an understanding of what moves economies. This is very important. I mean, remember what President Carter from
It's our
the
biggest
US used to
challenge,
say.
what moves our economy.
He used to say, if he didn't have an answer off pat, he'd say, it's all about the economy. And that is it. That's what it is. We've got to know how to pull the economy onto a higher plane so that business can make more profits. On that we can get higher taxes. Government can get more revenue and develop the infrastructure of the country, which has been left in a very parlous state.
So now we have the confidence. What needs to happen now for us to see jobs being created and other building blocks coming on board?
Grow that confidence. Grow that confidence to an extent where we see that people will be, for instance, willing to invest in agriculture. Not while the latest expropriation without compensation is hanging over their head. We've got to have encouragement in the safety of the assets of the developers. We've got to have an assurance of a constant, cost-effective electricity supply. We haven't got that yet, and we've got to have labour understanding. There's a straight line between production and reward. Now, if these things start to become noticeable, then we'll find that there will be once more an investment into fixed investment. Now, this is one thing I noticed in the quarterly data which just came out. Fixed investment was down by 5.5%. That means we haven't got into a strong growth schedule yet. You've got to have investment in plant, in machinery, you know, in the base of development. Now that has begun to change. At least there's a glance at it and not a look away.
So through the year we've seen the BRICS meeting, we've seen just recently the Motsepe Foundation, all these people, we've seen the African Development Bank also have a gathering here where there were all these pledges of billions and billions of amounts. How do we make a balance between money that is being pledged by foreign investors and money that, a commitment that has to be given by South African investors?
First of all, where's the money? You know, we haven't, we've heard about it, but we haven't seen it. So when we see it, when we see changes in bank balances, then we'll know. When we know there's greater liquidity in the markets, business has access to more funding, then we'll know that we're on the right track. But we're not there yet. What we have to say is, what do we need? What do we need to create jobs, to build a thriving economy? Well, we've grown at 2.2%, and we're cheering, fantastic. I'd like to point out one of our members in the BRICS group, you just mentioned them, India. They've just produced their economic data, which shows that they grew at 7.5%. They say, gee, sorry, we should have done better. Now, really, that shows where we ought to be. It shows what we've got to aim at. The last time we got 5% or more growth was in the middle 90s.
Quite a while back.
Yeah, 2000.
Sort of like become a history lesson.
2000. and it can be done. That proved it can be done. What do we need? As I said, confidence. Confidence to put down cash and to employ
In the
more
past
people.
political administration, there were concerns that corporate was hoarding money. And now suddenly there are all these pledges. Does that put paid to that assertion that corporate was keeping away money?
It means there's a willingness to consider committing to developing with the use of that capital, putting that capital into growth prospects. We've got to see that they're there first. How do you get that? You've got to have confidence. We haven't got it just yet, but I think it's a growing factor. How
will all of this translate into prosperity for the ordinary South African? Myself thinking, how will this impact my life?
let's start off by saying the ordinary South African, you're not because you're employed. You know, this is the problem. There are a huge number who aren't employed. How do we get there? We've got to get the capitalists saying, I'm willing to risk my capital. I'm willing to build a new factory. I'm going to put in more machinery. I'm going to need more workers to do that. And then these workers will be paid. They will spend that money. What goes around comes around.
Is that still how it
grows the economy?
Is that how it still works, Ian?
Yes.
These days, people are encouraged to create themselves as opposed to look forward to gainful employment, to create for themselves.
Look how much emphasis there has been on entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
Teach people, teach somebody to lay a row of bricks. If he can do that straight, he'll go to his mother and say, I want to build a room. Instead of living under the table in your house, I want a proper house. When his neighbor sees him doing that, he'll say, gee, if you can do that, do one for me. Now we've got two people employed as they both work on it. Then they'll want somebody to work with them.
It's not that simple though, is it?
It's a start. Starting from the bottom up, and that's what we need to do. We need the commitment to the capital and then to start from a low base to grow into higher things.
The petrol price decrease, will it give the consumers a bit of relief, especially at this time where people want to be splurging for Christmas?
This is a favorite subject. I'm so glad you brought it up. Yes, it will be a relief, and especially right now when the spending goes on to non-essentials to some extent. But what we've got
to a huge extent.
Yes. What I want to know is, yes, the petrol price comes down by R1.80. How much will taxi fares come down?
Yeah.
They won't. That's the problem. It's one of these things where once we've had a price hike, the consumer doesn't ever get it back when the fundamentals change. Now, if government wants to look at price fixing, how about starting there? You know, when the cost of transport goes up, the price of bread and meat and milk and all the essentials goes up as well. But the prices don't come down.
Yeah.
And this is what we have to get into, this idea of fair value, and I'm not sure that we're there yet.
We're talking about all these weird and wonderful stories of our economy improving, but Eskom is having its own real challenges. Will that not be a setback, perhaps?
Yes, yes. You know, I've spoken to foreign company managers, and they say one of our primary important factors, a constant, reliable, cost-effective electricity supply. You can't come to us and say, yes, we're considering putting up the price of electricity up by 15% this year and the year after and the year after that. You say, that's not cost-effective. We've got to get into the idea we've got to govern our cost levels. We've got to keep them at reasonable levels where the users can make a decent return out of the use of that facility.
It has been said that it's going to take a lot to bring South Africa, as you said, we're in the basement and we now need to come up to recover from the damage of the past few years. Yes. What do we do to keep this momentum going in terms of this 2.2% growth number?
Well, I think the important thing is, once again, the word we started with was confidence. Assure company managers that if they expand their business, it's not going to be taken from them. It's no good coming along and saying, yes, you bring me $1,000, but before you do anything, I've got a BEE contract here, I can only invest $900. And you come back in 2 years' time and say, wow, it's a nice looking business. Sorry, I now want another 10%, and no, I'm not going to pay for it. It's this sort of attitude that we have. Government has got to realize the private sector is not the enemy. They should be a partner. There should be partnerships. If we can work on public-private partnerships, get everybody in moving in the same direction at the same time, that is what we need. It has been done in the past, and I think this is where we have to go.
So this confidence you're talking about, let's go back there, it's not only based on fundamental business basics, it's also based on political confidence.
Absolutely.
How does that talk to this development of the economy growing?
Well, there will be confidence to some extent because we're seeing that we're in the start of a possible growth phase. That's step number one. What we have to do, though, is make quite sure that we don't put off developers, that we don't say, well, these are the rules today, but if you come back tomorrow, the goalpost might be over there. Now, that is what we have to do. We have to have firm, fixed, achievable goals for the private sector. We have to make sure that we don't keep making it more and more difficult for them to operate in a profitable way. And we've got to get them on our side. After all, the private sector is the source of government's revenue. So it's from the tax base. So this is where we need to go.
You touched a bit on agriculture. Let's talk about the sectors that drove this growth.
Okay.
What sectors should we be giving more emphasis to?
Well, agriculture, let's just say, first of all, there was in the third quarter, there was a big boost, which happens every year, in fact. It's when the maize crop is brought in. That's our major agricultural product, and it gets reaped and harvested mostly in the third quarter, and that's why there was a huge fillip there. Will it carry on? I think what we have to say is stop trying to find small plots to be farmed by small-time farmers. Rather let these big combinations get to work where they can afford these multi-million rand combine harvesters and huge tractors and that sort of equipment, and can afford sod plants and seed and fertilizer at the right time. That must be a starting point.
Ian Cruickshanks, thank you so much for your time, and thanks for coming through to talk to us.
Right.
And you're watching The Agenda. Let's get back to